These words to Saddam Hussein in the 1990s drew heavy criticism. Mr Galloway was expelled from Labour in 2003 after he said British troops should not obey orders in Iraq.
It's a very painful day for me to be placed in what is a short trial.
Duly elected member.
2 years later, he was back, beating a Labour MP to win Bethnal Green and Bow for the Respect Party. He lost it in 2010, but returned again in a by-election in 2012, this time for Bradford West. Some supporters feel his finest moment came in the US Senate.
Hello! Hiya, Medical. How are you? Rochdale got defeated, and even Tories got defeated.
Where?
Rochdale.
So Labour won?
An appearance on Celebrity Big Brother.
Labour. No, because of what happened.
Provided a memorable moment of
He felt really upset. His daughter was sad.
Guess what? One job without going back?
Oh, good.
Just family problems?
Yeah, I thought so.
And I said to her, I thought how upset you, so I left and she goes, no. Because you looked at me anyway.
Arouses division. Helen Catt, BBC News.
Well, let's go back to our political...
Move round!
I'm Nicola Beckford.
What's your analysis? How do you think this victory for George Galloway is going to affect our...
George Galloway.
Well, George Galloway is combative, he's controversial, there's no doubt that he'll use his time on the backbenches.
The Reform for Britain, I think he is.
Victory has the potential to affect the mood, the tone of our politics in the run-up to a general election, though not necessarily afterwards. He has said that he will stand candidates in constituencies across the country, but it's difficult to imagine another candidate with the name recognition, the campaigning history of George Galloway himself, and in that sense it might be difficult for him to replicate the victory that we have seen here in Rochdale. A general election is also a very different scenario. The mainstream parties will ratchet up their campaigning and people think about who they want to be Prime Minister. But I do think this election does tell us something about people also wanting
I'm doing much better than yesterday.
Local community and that kind of sense.
Oh, yesterday.
The party politics
Horrendous.
that you get in Westminster.
Okay, Hannah, thank you very much indeed. The UK will pay at least £370 million to Rwanda, even if no migrants are sent there. That's according to a report by the government spending watchdog.
Oh, good.
The policy to deter small boats, first announced in 2022, has faced a series of legal setbacks. Labour says the new figures are a national scandal, but the Home Office insists that if action is not taken, then the cost of housing asylum seekers in the UK will far exceed the cost of sending them to Rwanda. Israel is facing growing international criticism over reports that more than 100 Palestinians were killed as they crowded around aid trucks in northern Gaza yesterday.
Medical.
Israel says most
I
of
still
the
got
victims
some
died in a
mine
crush after its troops had fired warning shots. But the United Nations Secretary General has called for an independent investigation into what happened. From Jerusalem, our Middle East correspondent Yolan Nell.
Yay! I've only one job this week.
What is starkly clear from yesterday's scenes
And another
of
one
thousands surging around aid lorries,
on Sunday.
Palestinians in northern Gaza are increasingly starving. Aid hasn't been reaching them.
This year, 6 days.
Oh,
With
yeah.
some casualties rushed to this hospital, witnesses accused Israeli forces of randomly opening fire.
Medical.
They say young men were killed or wounded simply for trying to provide
for
their families.
The situation was unimaginably crazy. If aid is going to come to us in this way, we don't want it. We don't want to live on the blood of our children.
But Israel says the aid lorries were looted and most of those killed were crushed or run over. It says its soldiers and tanks fired only warning gunshots to drive people back.
The trucks were overwhelmed, and the people driving the trucks, which were Gazan civilian drivers, ploughed into the crowds of people.
Internationally, there's been shock and condemnation. The latest events in Gaza show the extent of the humanitarian crisis, and they've led to renewed calls to stop the fighting. But at the same time, a senior Hamas official has warned that the latest truce talks could now be derailed. About to board his helicopter, the US President Joe Biden was asked if what's happened could complicate a new ceasefire deal. For now, the fighting rages on in Gaza, and the suffering of civilians continues. Yolanda Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
And the time is just 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. Big crowds in Moscow defy the authorities there and turn out for the funeral of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. And coming up, it's been the wettest February on record. The Met Office says it's been a mild winter with fewer frosty nights than normal.
In the Midlands, we meet the woman who called 999 to report her police officer ex-partner for domestic abuse, but ended up being arrested herself. And an eye on the Paris Olympics, the Cheltenham event rider who's hoping to represent Team GB for a second time.
People in Iran are voting in elections for a new parliament today, the first test of opinion there since a series of protests against the hardline Islamic regime. But turnout is expected to be very low. Several blocks of reformist politicians have boycotted the election altogether. Well, Iran has been badly hit by international sanctions, widespread economic hardship and violent unrest, prompted by the death in custody of a young woman detained by the morality police for allegedly violating rules on the wearing of a headscarf. Well, the BBC has not been allowed to report from Iran for 5 years, but now our correspondent Caroline Davis has been given rare permission to report from there. Let's go to Caroline live now. And Caroline, this is a really big test for the Iranian authorities after those protests a couple of years ago.
Ben, historically, turnout has been connected to legitimacy for the authorities here in Iran. Now, here in the capital in Tehran, we are expecting turnout to be lower than in the rest of the country, which is likely to be higher. Some of this early polling has suggested it could be historically low, but we don't have the official figures yet. Now, we've seen a concerted effort by the authorities here to frame this particular election around having a strong Iran. Now, the Supreme Leader urged citizens on Wednesday to come out and vote and said that failure to do so in large numbers would mean that Iran's enemies will threaten your security in one way or another. Now, at the polls this morning when we were speaking to voters, quite a few of them echoed those same sentiments and said that the reason they had come out was because of statements from the Supreme Leader and because they felt it was their duty to do so. Not everybody feels the same way, and there are concerns too about things like the economy here in Iran, inflation, and of course, as you mentioned, if there's lingering feeling after the protests too. All of those together will be the big question when we do finally see what voter turnout has been. How much has that affected the way that people have felt about the authorities here and whether they've wanted to come out and vote?
Carrie, many thanks indeed. Caroline Davis reporting live there from Tehran. The Samaritans say more must be done to shut down pro-suicide websites, saying that they are vile. It comes after a BBC investigation identified a Ukrainian man selling a poisonous chemical, the same substance which has previously been linked to at least 130 deaths in the UK. Well, it's been revealed today that some buyers of the chemical died even after welfare checks from the police. Angus Crawford has this report.
What were you posting in the post office? I know what you were posting. It's a poisonous chemical. Confronting a poison seller. Leonid Zakatenko told an undercover reporter he sends 5 parcels a week from Ukraine to British buyers. He sells the same chemical, which has been linked to more than 130 deaths in the UK. How do you live with yourself? One of those was David Parford's son Tom, who was just 22 when he died. He bought from a different supplier, learned all about it on a pro-suicide website.
Yeah.
The authorities here
That's yours?
No, you can.
I found mine. That's yours?
No, you should get that one to me, the one that one. Could you?
No.
No, just leave by you.
It took almost a month for the parcel to get here, but before it arrived, police officers went to David's house and carried out a welfare
No,
check.
nothing.
So even though the authorities do seem to
Not
be
even that many people outside.
the poison itself is still getting through.
In many ways, I'm really pleased that there are now welfare checks, but as Angus just highlighted, it's completely ineffective. The poison was still delivered to my home address. And we know, as Angus said, that unfortunately, welfare checks have taken place in the past, and they have missed that somebody is vulnerable.
I had 2 female local officers, police officers, uniformed officers turn up at my door, and they didn't seem to know exactly why they were there.
It seems this is a wider problem. Mary also bought the chemicals and had a visit from the police who didn't take it away.
They had no clue. I didn't get the impression they actually knew what they were looking for. I could have given them a wooden spoon and they wouldn't have known. They didn't know if they were looking for tablets or chemicals or anything, so they have no idea.
The case of Kenneth Law reveals the faults in the system. The Canadian chef now faces 14 murder charges. He's accused of supplying the chemical to hundreds of people in the UK. More than 90 are dead. Now, the National Crime Agency admits some people have died after a police visit. In a statement, the NCA said, there are cases of individuals who have sadly died following a safe and well check. This would be addressed by police forces in line with their policies and national guidelines. Zakatenko denies selling the chemical, but we've alerted the Ukrainian authorities. Maybe they can interrupt the deadly trade. Crawford, BBC News.
Border security at UK airports is neither effective nor efficient. That was the warning from the immigration watchdog in a series of reports produced before he was fired. David Neal describes a Home Office culture of defensiveness and reluctance to engage with recommendations. Reports have only just been published by the government after months of delays. Mr. Neal was sacked. Details of the reports appear in newspapers.
In the mouth.
Where?
In the kitchen. Go underneath the
Marcus Osborne lay in wait for Katie Hickton before attacking her as soon as she came through the door. He then into the house and brutally murdered her.
in the kitchen instead. Yeah, have you got anything, Bob?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, so I think.
Yes, Ben. The judge said this was a case of exceptional seriousness.
So I think you might have done it already.
As you were saying,
Sorry, that was a mouth.
forces went into Katie Hickton's home when she was out. There was another
So there was one.
also several children. When Katie Hickton returned home, we attacked her stabbing her with a bread knife almost 100 times.
Was a good thing I saw it.
Her own phone to trick
I didn't scared of that poison.
to the house where he
No, not me.
Now,
Not me.
we've been hearing this afternoon from
Damn now.
families of those victims, and
You can't be upset because it's could be always. No, it can't be upset anyway.
had failed
No, we always clean it and everything.
to kill the 2 victims. And that's because,
Yeah,
as
no, I
we
think because
earlier this week, Katie Hickton
I don't know what's
had been to
happening.
West Yorkshire Police a
Don't
few
know.
days before the murder, and she had told them
Yeah, what the
that
fuck?
Osborne
I think it's scared me now.
and any new boyfriend. Now, West Yorkshire Police said
Yeah, I think it's scared me just now.
because reviews into the case are still underway by their own Directorate of Professional Standards and also by the Office for the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Thank you.
Sancha, thank you very much indeed. Sancha Berg reporting there. In Formula One, Red Bull team principal Christian Horner has again denied allegations of inappropriate behaviour after the leaking of a series of alleged messages.
Yeah, Lizzie wasn't a spider or anything. Lizzie wasn't a spider and then.
Colleagues
and targeted ringer-filler serum.
to defend their two world titles tomorrow.
Fine lines appear reduced after 5 minutes.
Join me now.
Every expression of you.
What's happening today on this?
Well, just to recap, Ben, on what happened yesterday, 149 people involved in Formula One, including top officials and team principals, received an anonymous email containing a link to a drive of messages purporting to involve Christian Horner. In response, Horner said, "I won't comment on anonymous speculation, but to reiterate, I have always denied."
No, I think because it's going to suffocate.
On Wednesday, he was cleared of wrongdoing.
Oh no, don't know. That's more scary. That's more scary seeing you dead and you have to touch it. I mean, you have to touch it. But has the smell gone from it? Does the smell even go from a thing bulb? No, it doesn't. No, because it stays there and then you can just attack it. Just get some more. No, or even get the ones with the, be careful, they don't. Get the ones that open.
But we understand the situation regarding Christian Horner will be raised, so this matter isn't going away as it continues to dominate the start of the season.
Okay, Laura, thank you very much for that. Now then, this year's UK entry for the Eurovision Song Contest has been unveiled. Ollie Alexander, former frontman of the group years and years, will perform a song called Dizzy at the event, which is in Sweden.
Oh, look like this month also has a bank holiday.
He'll be heading to Malmo in Sweden in May to fly the flag. The song is about being dizzy. It's like an overwhelming dizziness from like how much you just love someone. Of course, we did get a few hints about the song when Ollie made his BBC weather debut with Breakfast's very own Carol Beckford.
Ollie Alexander, take it away, Ollie. It appears there is a rare phenomenon of dizzy spells running towards Nigeria Island, and it looks like they're coming all the way from Sweden.
So what do Eurovision fans think of Dizzy?
How do you describe it? It's like a chart hit, like a radio hit, just a very kind of modern, fresh, current kind of sound.
Last year's Eurovision was massive. It brought hundreds of thousands of people to Liverpool. But when it came to the UK's entry, May Muller, we weren't able to repeat the success of 2022 and Sam Ryder. But how do experts rate our chances this year?
I think Ollie is brilliant. I think it's going to be great when he's out. Fingers crossed he knows how to handle that crowd, handle that pressure. It'll be brilliant. I feel really buzzed about it. We've got a song we're talking about.
So Ollie Alexander's got the backing of UK Eurovision fans. Now to the hard task of impressing the rest of Europe and getting those votes. Charlotte Gallagher, BBC
Now, believe it or not, it is the first day of the meteorological spring.
No, we know how to
Parts of the UK have had their wettest February on record. We've got a full weather forecast coming up here in a moment. Our BBC weather presenter Ben Rich has been finding out what the
So you might be nervous, something in the kitchen. Yeah, not me, you. That might be why you went to it,
It's been wet at miles too.
Underneath or something?
Seeing so many different varieties blooming early.
Underneath the bridge or something?
Is unusual. We've seen a lot less frost than normal this winter. Good news for some, but not for trees like apples and pears that need their cold winter sleep.
They need more of those germs if they don't get enough. They can produce less fruit bugs, which literally...
Underneath the fridge then? Underneath the fridge? A hole? Yeah, why don't you cover it? Just cover it. Or something just went inside the fridge thing.
Which means there hasn't
We can see the least frosty winters all clustered in the recent decades and the most frosty ones during the 60s and 70s.
Here at the Met Office in Exeter, they collect data every hour of every day, crunching the numbers to work out what the ups and downs of our weather can tell us about our changing climate.
Our climate has warmed by about a degree in the last 50 or 60 years. 1 degree in the average winter temperature can have quite significant impacts. And if we're talking about frosts, that 1 degree warming is about 3 weeks.
For the scientists at Kew, this means they're having to assess all their big plants, working out which ones are at risk. Which ones are on wood conservation areas, which ones have got it's been a real hit bag.
No, a little bit, no, because we need to think of it, so it doesn't scare people that come to us. So we don't scare people that come to us. Yeah, that's why. That's why we have to. Apparently, the same thing that happened in Lancashire again. What the sound? No, in the kitchen.
Radio? The radio? The radio?
They're going slow. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, you can just clean. Why don't you just clean why don't you just clean? Give the wash, the floor. Why don't you just give the floor a wash?
What, the floor?
Although there is a lot of cloud, and it feels quite
It's not because I'm out, it's because it looks dirty. It's not because I'm mouse. Yeah, it's not because I'm mouse.
Are you scared? Yeah.
Why did it rat?
Oh.
Yeah, that's why. Where's the go just put something? I just want the whole covered up in there. There. Oh no. No, it didn't matter. I think if the whole is still covered up in there. It was Hoover or something. Oh yeah, Prince. Yeah, you can just clean. It'll be good. It'll be...
BBC News at 1. You can keep up to date with all the very latest developments on our BBC website. Do have a